Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I do appreciate you stopping by, spending your time watching me tinker. And this video, I'm tinkering with this Sandoz 25 joule automatic. It is another eBay find, only costing me £15, around about 20 American dollars. And I saw it, and I saw where that crown was, and I thought straight away, it's got a Seiko movement in it. So I don't think I've done a Seiko on the channel before, so I thought to myself, we may as well get this, something a little bit different. It's not exactly a Seiko, but I can almost assure you it probably is a Seiko or a Seiko Corp movement. But the hands move, the date wheel and the date wheel move, and it does run. So I just think a nice clean up, a nice service. As we can see, let's focus. So yeah, it's a bit erratic. So we'll, like I say, give it a service, and then we'll see where we end up. First of all, we're going to remove this strap. I quite like this strap. Has seen better days itself. I mean, that bar, spring bar there, look, that's bent. I'll go in the bin. As I was saying, the strap's seen better days, but I think it'll be absolutely fine with just a bit of a polish. There's a nice build-up of dirt on the strap. Lovely bit of arm cheese. I'll give that a scrape. A little bit of pegwood so it won't do any damage. I mean, this is going to go through the ultrasonic cleaner, but it doesn't hurt to get rid of this first. And there's a good bit of it. There's that much, I can almost write hello in there, look. So I'll put that to the side for now and we'll come back to that. But in the meantime, my rubber ball isn't good enough, so I'll have to get the case opening tool out. Now this is just a cheap Chinese knockoff, but it does. I'm just putting a cloth at the bottom there, that's just to protect the case. And then there's a little knob to turn which will clamp it in nice and tight. And then I'll get another bit of plastic and we'll put that over the back, and again that's to stop any scratches. And then there's two prongs that I need to line up. And then once they've been lined up correctly, we can press down and give it a turn. There we go. Kind of like breaking the seal if you like. We can get that out of the way. And now it will undo with me rubber ball. Ooh, that's not what I was expecting. That isn't a Seiko movement. What's going on? Okay. Well, it looks like this is the first time someone's been inside. There's no marks there. I'm absolutely gobsmacked. There appears to be a little bit of play with the rotor. But again, I was expecting this to be a Seiko movement, and that isn't. Okay, that's a nice surprise. I honestly only thought Seiko were the brand that did that with the winding stem just at the bottom. Like I say, they normally mean that they are only automatic wind. There's a little clip there, we're going to remove that and then we can take the rotor away. And then we're going to need to take the winding stem out. Again, it's a press button style. I do like them. Give it a little tap. There we go. That dial does look really nice, to be honest. And I do like the blue. But that case and that crystal have certainly seen better times and got a bit more of this dirt. It's making an absolute state of my bench. I do apologise if you can hear a 3D printer going in the background. I do keep it in a cupboard, but while I'm narrating this I can hear it whirring away, so I do apologise. Again, more of that arm cheese there. Again, most of this will come out in the ultrasonic cleaner, but it doesn't do any harm to get rid of any sort of big build up first. And I mean that is some build up. So I'll put that to the side, tidy up. Oh, that's fell out, that little cog, and that's come off that winding stem. And sneaky suspicion is that's for setting possibly the date. But we'll find out as we get further into it. But first we're going to need to take the hands off, and as always protect the dial. So that's what that bit of plastic's doing. And then we can get these hand levers underneath and just gently prise them away. And then we can put them somewhere safe. And I usually put them in with the dial. I'll give this a clean up. And like I say, that dial does look nice. I mean, that crystal is absolutely shot, but I can't see us being able to get hold of another, so we'll have to do what we can with that. But first of all, we're going to take the dial off, and then there's 2 screws, and they're pinching the dial feet. Oh. And just loosen them off, and it'll come away. And there's a separator sort of ring there, that plastic thing. So again, we'll keep all of those bits together. And we can get it into a movement holder. Look to get it disassembled. I think that always starts with taking out the power. There we go, you see the balance stop. So we can then remove the balance. Now can you see that half circle where my screwdriver just was? It's a little indent to allow you to put something in to pry up that cock for the balance. It makes it a little easier. And we can take the balance out, have a quick quick look and then put that somewhere safe, and then we can start to disassemble the automatic works. Now if it had been the movement I thought it was going to be, we'd be talking about the magic lever, but that's for another video. I still can't get over this isn't a Seiko movement. So with those two screws out, we can take this bridge away. And again, I'm just using something that's plastic so I don't leave any marks. Oh, knock that off. I'm just going to put that wheel back where I think it goes, like so. We can take out these two. Oh, I keep dropping everything. I think my tweezers need dressing. Again, these wheels appear to have two small jewels. Now I think there is a specialised oil for these sort of parts, which I haven't got. So we'll oil it as best we can. Just check the pivots under the microscope as I take it apart, and then we can take this bridge off. Now again, sorry for me tilting the movement, but I do this under the microscope, and when it's flat like that, your hand covers up where the screw slot is. So a lot of the time I have to tilt it so I can see. Just putting these two screws together just to see if there's any difference, and they look alike to me. And again, use my plastic spatula. I can take that plate away, that bridge away. Now I could have taken that off as a unit and then assembled it then that way, but I find sometimes it's easier while it's still attached to the actual movement to take things apart. And now we can move on to the ratchet wheel. So the ratchet wheel screw, that's a normal thread, and that crown wheel, that's a left-handed thread. And I can come in with a bit of Rodico and lift these two wheels away, revealing the click spring. Just have a look underneath that wheel for any wear. It looks clear. And again, I'll look underneath that wheel. That also looks clear. And what you're looking for is signs of wear. And that would usually indicate that there's some play. Ooh, where did that? There we go. Didn't go far. Could quite have easily ended up in the Swiss space program. Now we can take the click out. I mean, this movement's dying to get itself apart. Now I'm going to turn it over. And what I want to do is get the cannon pinion off, and then we're good for disassembling the train. But first we've got this C-clip. There's lots of similarities to a Seiko movement, I will say that. Now I'm just going to pop this bit of Rodico there, and then I'm going to get something else, a bit of pegwood maybe. There we go. And I'm going to push on each end of that C-clip. There we go. And that's just then gone into the Rodico. Put that safe. And then we can lift that disc away. We've got another spring here. And oh, that's actually attached. Okay. So that'll stay in place. So we've just got 3 screws to take out. And these seem to be riveted in place. So we can take out these 3 screws and remove that plate. And then that'll allow us access to what's below. I'm dropping everything today. So as you can see, those wheels are riveted, so they'll stay in place. And off comes the hour wheel. And then we can remove the outer date ring. Again, we'll keep that with a dial. Take out the minute wheel. And then out comes the intermediate wheel. Now, can you see that chamfer towards the bottom? So it needs to go in that way when we return it. And then we can remove this spring. And that's for the date ring. That helps it to snap over. Now there's not a great deal more this side, so we may as well carry on. So we'll remove this intermediate date wheel. If I can keep anything in my tweezers. I think they need dressing. And then once that's out of the way, again checking for any wear, we can then remove this date indicator driving wheel. There is a bit of plastic on that, so I'm going to clean that separate. Can you see there? I won't take it apart, I'm going to leave it as is, and we'll give that a separate clean. And then we can remove the cannon pinion. Again, checking all the while, see if there's any signs of wear. And then we'll remove the setting lever spring. That's the one with the lobster claw. And then we can remove the yoke spring. Or the yoke and leave the spring in place. Either way, it's all good. And I'll put that into the tray of parts. And there's the clutch. And the setting lever. Again, I like to just drop it into place just so muscle memory. We can then turn it over and start on the trainer wheels. Oh, that screw's escaping us. Again, I'm just checking to see if there's any differences. They all appear to be the same. So we can remove this bridge. A little check of the jewels. Again, check for any wear. And we can take out the seconds wheel, the fourth wheel, and the third wheel. And we have this secondary bridge. And just having a look at the screws, they're the same. Use a bit of Rodico. Remove whatever that is. Out comes the main barrel. And then the escape wheel. Again, all of the while checking pivots. And then the centre wheel. And then finally, we can take out the pallet. Again, just have a little check of the jewel there. I do have another check once it's all clean. Then out comes the pallet fork. Again, just have a check of these jewels. Put it in a bit of Rodico, get it into the microscope, make sure there's no chips and cracks, and they look good. Now these dial feet screws, I'm going to tighten up. I generally tend to leave them in the movement for cleaning. But if you tighten them up, it will stop them coming out in the wash. Now I'm just going to show you my pre-clean. Use a bit of isopropyl alcohol Now the pallet forks won't go in here, and the balance won't go in here, but pretty much everything else will. And I just use a bit of pegwood to hold it in place, and then get a soft brush and just give it a bit of a once over. And then I'll flip it over and do the other side. Again, this just loosens any surface dirt, gets rid of anything loose before it goes into the cleaning machine. I am going to speed through. It does take a little while. And again, once I've got parts clean, you'll then see me put them back into the tray and then move on to another section. A little dry off before they go in. And then, like I say, I'll move on to another section of the tray and clean those parts. Working my way around. Once I've got them all pre-cleaned, I'll usually go over the pivots of the wheels with some eave stick. And then with everything pre-cleaned, it'll then go into some baskets ready for the cleaning machine. But we are going to need to remove the mainspring first. That'll also need to go in the wash. And then bigger parts that I definitely know are what and go where will go into this sort of top tray. And then I've got these smaller baskets, and I'll then usually put the other parts in groups into these, so in sections. So as you can see, the section of that tray into one of the pots, and then move on to the next section or another section, and then put all of those bits into a pot. I mean, you will see I don't put the thin small springs in there. I usually put those into the jar of B-dip, and that's just to keep them safe, because they are that thin. They come through the mesh of these cleaning baskets. And then once they're in, we'll pop them into the bigger basket. Now that part, as I said, I'm not going to put into the machine. The case I'm just going to run through with some pegwood. And again, this is just prior to it going into the ultrasonic cleaner. And again, clean up this bracelet a little bit more. And then we move on to, at this point of the video, I do like to thank everybody for commenting. So if you have left a comment, you'll see your name going along the screen there. And you'll also see a small QR code. You can always buy me a coffee if you fancy. Everything will go towards future projects. So again, we get it into the first stage of cleaning. While that's going on, we can then get the strap into the ultrasonic cleaner, and we can give that a pre-clean before we give it a polish. Now all I'm going to do is use a bit of hot water and some washing up liquid. That'll be perfect for the first clean. I don't know if you're familiar with these machines, but they make the world's worst noise. And I don't mean that beep of it starting. And we're going to set it for its longest period, half an hour. Now before putting the lid on, I might give you a look inside, because I can see already some swirls of dirt coming out. Can you see that? So it's doing its job. So I'll give that half an hour. Let its work its magic. And we'll see what we can get it looking like after we've given it a polish. And that's what the water looks like after it's finished. Now that was dirty. Look how black that water is. There we are, all of the parts are now clean. All separated back out into their little sections of the tray, ready for reassembly. And there's the strap. After it's been in the ultrasonic cleaner, already it's much better. I think we've still got to do something with that crystal. Okay, so let's get the movement into a holder and we can make a start on getting it back together. First we're going to start with a mainspring. Now, being an automatic movement, you need some braking grease inside the barrel on the walls. That's what this is here. And the grease I'm using is Mobius 8213. I think it's known as a strong braking grease. And here's a first. That Chinese mainspring winder I've got, that has been absolutely useless, fits this spring. So before putting it in, I'm just going to add a bit of grease to it. So I've just got a bit of watchmaker's tissue paper there, folded up, a little bit of grease on the inside, and just run it along the spring. I will still add a drop or two into the barrel when it goes in. But I vowed the next time I go to use this and it doesn't work, I'm going to make a new winder. But luck would have it, as you can see, it's working. I think that's only the second or third ever time. Now you have to be a little bit careful now, because this bridle gets caught, so you need to just persuade it in before carrying on the winding. And then once that disappears inside the barrel, unwind, and I'll take the tension off. And then sometimes it will come out, and other times you just need to get a pair of tweezers in between, and what you're doing is you're making sure that spring isn't springing out once you've wound it in. Be a little bit tricky, but there you go. And then inside the barrel, and click. I love that noise. So then we can get the barrel lid on, but first we need to get the arbor in. And as you know, I like to use a pin vise. It does make it much easier. And as I said, I am going to add a couple of drops of oil into the barrel, and then we can get the lid on. That's what this little white thing is. It'll sit there and almost in the middle, and then you pop your lid on, press down, and you'll get a little click if you're lucky. But that'll press that lid closed. And now I've just got the main plate over a light, and I'm checking the jewels there. They all look good. Now that light behind will just highlight any cracks or chips. So I'm just going to add a bit of oil in before I put the centre wheel back in. And that's the Mobius 9101. Work it around a little. So, while we put this back together, let's talk about the Sandoz brand. Now, it was a watch company has rich history that dates back to the late 19th century, and it was actually established by Henry Frederick Sandoz near Tavannes, Switzerland. Henry Sandoz founded Henry Sandoz & C in the 1870s, and later producing complicated watches under the name Sima. And in 1890, Sandoz, in partnership with the Schwab families, established the Tavannes Watch Company in Mallory, near Tavannes, in the French-speaking Bernese Jura of Switzerland. By the time Henry Sandoz died in 1913, the company was known for producing watches under the name Henry Sandoz & Fils, employing a significant workforce and producing thousands of watches daily. Now, a lot of this information I'm telling you has been generated by AI, so obviously that's been and scoured the interwebs, and it's brought back all the info it can, and I'm just reading through and letting you know what I find quite interesting. So I did find out that in 1971 the Sandoz brand was either licensed or sold, and it managed to create 4 sub-brands of the Sandoz name. So you've got Sandoz Swiss, which I believe is what this particular watch is. Then you've got Sandoz Hong Kong and Sandoz Singapore, and then Sandoz Spain. Now, what makes me say this is one of the Swiss ones is because it says it on the dial. It's T Swiss T, and I believe those T's are to do with the luminous lume that's used. It signifies, I think, that it's non-radioactive, and then also because of this particular movement. And this particular movement is the FHF 909. Now, I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation here, but it's the Fabrique de Horologie de Fontaine-Mellon. That's the FHF part. No laughing. Now, it was introduced in around 1972, and has a power of reserve of approximately 43 hours. It includes sweep seconds, day and date display, both of which are quick set, meaning they can be adjusted manually without affecting the movement of the watch hands. And we'll see that a little bit later. I've got the trainer wheels in, and now it's time to install the bridge. And again, what I do is if you wiggle the wheels around, a lot of the times they'll just fall into the jewel holes, just like that did then. And make sure they're all free, they're all spinning. And then while they are, we can put the screws back. Again, just keeping a bit of pressure on that bridge to stop any of the pivots jumping out the jewel holes. Once you've got 1 or 2 screws in, you can then take the pressure off that bridge. And then with that tightened down, we'll have another check. Everything still runs free. Then we can start assembling the click. We'll start with a click spring. You can hold your breath. Now we can put the click in place. And once that screw's in place, hopefully that spring won't go anywhere. I can breathe a little easier. Then we're going to add a drop of oil onto the top of the mainspring barrel arbor there, just before that wheel goes on, the ratchet wheel. There we go, and the ratchet's working fine. Just put a little bit of pressure on that plate, stop it moving while I tighten it. Now we can move on to the crown wheel. I'm just going to oil the areas where that runs. And quite often they do come like this in 2 parts. We'll get that screwed down, and then we'll add a little bit of the oil to the top of that. That's the Mobius 9101, which is the red oil. Again, come in with some Rodico afterwards and clean up any mess. And then we can get the pallet fork in. And then the pallet cock. I'm going to say everything is falling into place lovely on this movement. And once we've got that screwed down, we can put a bit of power into the mainspring. And this is just the easy way of winding it up while I've got no winding stemming. And as you can see, that pallet fork just flicks over as it should. And now it's the moment of truth. Will it start? Just being, there we are. Just being careful, gently persuading it to get going. And there it's running. That's what we like to see. We can get that tightened down now. And with that tightened down, we can oil the movement. And I'm just using the Mobius 9010 for the faster moving wheels and the 9101 for the slower moving. You can then come in with a bit of Rodico and tidy up any mess, any overspill. And with that done, we can move on to the other side, oil that side as well. And it's just the same process. And then we can look to oil the cap jewels. Obviously first we'll give them a quick clean. Again, we'll clean them in some Persian B dip. Like I said, this stuff evaporates like nobody's business, so you don't want to keep the lid off for too long. Then once it's been into the B dip and it's clean, we can drop a tiny drop of oil right into the centre, and it's the Mobius 9101. See, it's just a tiny drop in the middle. That should do. Then we can put the shutter back on. And we flip it over and get it back into the movement. And again, these little brass springs hold it into place, and they'll also flex if it's dropped or jolted, hence the reason the name for the shock system. And we can flip it over and we can do the one on the balance wheel then. Again, that's the same process. I'll take it out, pop it into a bit of Persian B dip. Give it a clean. And then once it's clean, we can oil it and reinstall it. Okay, I'm using the smallest oiler I have for this. I do have an automatic oiler, but I actually prefer doing it this way, when you can separate the jewel and the chaton. And you just saw that little drop of oil in the middle there. So my automatic oiler, I use that when it isn't quite feasible to remove the cap jewel. But that's the movement oiled. So we will leave that 24 hours or so before we actually put it on the time grapher and regulate it. While it's running in, we can continue building up the dial side, starting with the sliding clutch and a massive blob of grease. Don't quite need that much. All on the end of my tweezers there, we'll need to give that a clean. I just drop it in a bit of Rodico, that'll take off any excess off my tweezers. then we can oil up the posts where the yoke goes. And the end of that yoke should actually go into that groove there. Then in goes that winding pinion. Again, clear up any excess grease. And we can add a little bit of grease onto the setting lever. With the setting lever in place, we can move the yoke up out the way and then come in with the yoke spring. And again, this is always a bit of a nervous time. As you can see, it's quite a beefy spring. There we go. And we can install the setting lever spring. Again, that's that part with a little lobster claw. So again, what I'll do is I'll drop the screw in and give it a few turns, and then we can engage that little lobster claw on the post of the setting lever. Like so. Pop in the winding stem. Now there is another wheel to go in here, but we shall wait until it's needed, otherwise it'll just keep falling out. And now that's in position, we can tighten up that screw, add in a bit of grease, and then we can work that through. And as much grease as there is on that side, none of it's making its way over. So I'll add a little more and then tidy up. So that's a thing Rodico is great for, tidying your messes up. We can then add some oil onto some of the posts. That post there is where the date indicator driving wheel goes. Oh, there's a hair. We'll get rid of that. We can then install the intermediate date wheel. This is the one that will get screwed down. We'll oil up the centre post before the cannon pinion goes on. Pop that in, and then a firm but gentle press. A bit of oil on the post for the intermediate wheel and the minute wheel. And this intermediate wheel has got the chamfered end, so that goes down. Slight bit of oil on the cannon pinion there. And then comes the hour wheel. And we'll just rotate that round until the teeth engage. Like so. They're all turning as they should turn. And now we're going to add in the date jumper and the date jumper spring. Now it doesn't go in that way. Do you know when something happens before your brain registers? That was a case of that then. So now we can come in with the spring. And then with the spring in place we can put the date wheel over. So again what we'll have to do is just get it into position. And then we'll put in the centre plate. And then that should hold that date ring in place while we engage the date jumper spring. And if you was to do it before putting this plate on, what you generally tend to find is it'll put pressure on one side of that ring and you'll have a hard job lining holes up. And then once that's tightened down, we can then engage that spring, and then tighten all of the screws up. And again, things are working as they should. I'm just going to use a bit of Rodico and clean up this date ring. And then we can add in the day disc. And this is the one that's held on with the C clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it around the post ready, like that. Then it will need pushing down. But again, I'm going to engage the jumper for the day first, and can you see that this drop down then? And we can use the tweezers just to press that C-clip down and it'll fall into place in the channel. And we can look at reassembling this automatic works then. Like I said, we took it apart while it was on the back of the watch, but equally we could have taken it off and then dismantled it separately. Now those first two wheels you can see, there is a specialised oil, if you like, that you would normally use for that. But I don't have any, it's very expensive. It's called Lubetta. You know, if I was doing this as a profession I would get some, but I'm not going to spend out that money, unfortunately. So we'll just do as we can, and I kind of make my own. I use a bit of isopropyl alcohol and put a bit of Mobius 9010 in and drop the wheels in and give it a shake. But then again, I'll oil the jewel holes afterwards, just like this, and then flip it over and do the other side. As you can see, it's just the tiniest amount, and then we can run those wheels and then get it into the back of the watch. Just pop it down and turn the winding stem, make sure it's all engaging, and as you can see it is. So we can now screw that bridge down. And now it's time to get the dial on. That plastic separating ring that goes on first, and then the dial, and as you can see there's these dial feet screws. There's a recess that the dial leg fits in, and then that screw just tightens down onto it, that way keeping the dial in place. So with the dial on, we're going to need to get it to midnight before we put the hands on. And what we do is just keep turning it until the date jumps over. Just like that. And that's midnight. And then we can get the hour hand on. See a small hair there, we'll get rid of that. And there's another. Just to make sure, we'll just go around the dial. I will give it a blow off with my blower before it goes into the case. But I could just see those and they were doing my head in, so bit of horological, get them out of the way, and then we can press those hands down. We can then get the minute hand on. And again, use the hand press. Get that down fixed in position. Then we're just going to turn the hands, make sure they don't foul on each other. Make sure that our hand doesn't foul on that date window. It's not, it's absolutely fine. So we can go ahead now, get the seconds hand on. And I do like this blue hand. And then what I'm going to do is use the hand press. I'm just going to use the edge of it almost over the hole just to press it into position. So you don't want to press down too hard. And then again, we make sure that the hands don't foul on that second hand. And everything all looks good. We can move on to the case. Now, as I said, that crystal is absolutely shot. I wasn't going to bother filming, but I'm just going to show you my process. It's just a case of getting it on some sandpaper. This is 240 grit, and then work my way up through the grits right the way up to about 5,000 grit, and then use a bit of polywatch, and hopefully it'll come out looking better than it started with. And if you can see there, it's already starting to look a lot clearer. So that does take a few hours of work. We won't see all of it. You can get to see the finished product here. We can get it into the case. And there is this, I want to call it a spacer ring. Get it into place, and then we can put the 2 screws that hold that down. As you can see just there. There's one on the opposite side. And then we can get that tightened. That will stop it going anywhere. And then before we put the winding stem in, there's this little wheel that needs to go in first. And that wheel's what is responsible for driving the date. There we go. That's in. And now we can get the rotor on. And I did notice when I took it off there was a bit of play in the rotor, but I'm not going to do anything about it. There isn't that much, and it's not catching, and it's not causing any grief. But this seat clip is a lot easier to install than it was to take out. And all we're going to do is hold one side down, and then we're going to pull it open until it springs into place. And there we go, that's working as it should be. So with that done, we can get a new gasket on, but before that goes on, we'll give it a grease. That's just some silicone grease. So again, I'd like to thank you for joining me. You'll see it very shortly, all complete with a strap on. And like I say, thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. Like I say, it was a surprise not being a Seiko movement, but I think it's turned out quite well in the end. So let's get the strap on. We'll see it out in the world. And please leave a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. It is free. I'll see you on the next video.